Hey there, old guy back again. Hope you're having an awesome day. Thanks for tuning in. I was really excited when I found out that Steve Vai put together a kind of beginner's guide to guitar theory. And of course, I'm a huge Steve Vai fan, have been for about 30 years now, way back to his Frank Zappa days and Passion and Warfare. And if you don't have any of his records or follow him at all, he's probably one of the real godfathers of instrumental rock. And if you don't have the record Passion and Warfare, you really need to, because it should be in every guitar player's catalog. It's just an incredible display of musicianship. So this is the book. It's called Vaideology, and it's actually written by him, which is really quite exciting because it's his hand on this. He didn't do it through a writer or publisher. He actually put his hand to paper. Realistically, he says it right off the top that this is not a comprehensive text of music theory whatsoever. It's really more of a beginner's guide, something that for people who don't really know a whole lot of theory but are mildly interested in it. It's really, he even says it's a stepping stone for if you start reading the book and looking through it and start learning and get excited about it, that you should really go ahead and go online or buy the more dense texts that are easily available. You know, one of the cool things that is one of the first things in the book, it says follow your bliss, which for me that's what guitar playing music is to me. It's one of my happy places. It's I tell people that music is in my soul. There's it's my air. I need to listen to music every day and play music every day. So he goes into that a little bit in his introduction. He also shows a diagram of the fretboard with all the notes on it, and he kind of emphasizes note recognition. Then he talks a little bit about scales and intervals. Now, one thing is, he kind of goes through this in various portions of the book, so I'm not really going to go exactly by the book. I'm kind of condensing and putting some topics together. For me, everybody learns differently, and I think if the book had been organized the way I put it in my little cheat sheet note, it would have made a little bit more sense for me, but not everybody learns the same, and he does put it in a very systematic, very organized fashion. So he talks about scales and intervals, and one of the cool things he does is he shows like a major scale, or later on he talks about modes and he shows the modes, but he also gives you a chord progression so you can play the chord progression maybe on a looper or put it in your DAW, and then play to the scales that he shows. And this is a really great way to help you kind of with your ear training. And one of the things at the end of one of the chapters about this, he says, make every note work somehow, which is a really interesting way to look at music, because everybody's always so concerned about what it sounds like and whether they're playing the wrong note, whereas he kind of emphasizes that it'll work, you just have to figure out where and when. He also talks about composing music, if you're into that, with the bass and treble clefs. He goes into the terminology, time signatures, polyrhythm type things. Really interesting stuff. Again, for me, it was more of a, hey, I know this stuff kind of intuitively when I just play music, but it's interesting that he breaks it down in a very simple, easy to understand way. Then he talks about chords. And what's cool too is that he puts the chord on a chart and then transposes it and shows you how he transposes it to actual musical notation, which is kind of neat. And he also goes through the spelling of the chords and also goes through a chord dictionary. He doesn't show you all the chords, obviously, because there's thousands of them in chord charts, but he talks about inversions and thirds and fifths and things like that. So it's really basic, interesting stuff for somebody who's just getting into it. Interestingly enough, too, which I found very surprising in this book, is there's an introduction to tablature. And that kind of was like, that's really cool. And he shows you the tablature and he shows you the musical notation, so you can then go back in the book and kind of start to transcribe it. And then with the fretboard diagram he shows, you can really get an idea of where things rest. The last thing that I want to talk about is he also has a topic on reading rhythms, which is really cool. He calls it, quote unquote, the groove, which is basically all that rhythms are. And he talks about that you have to kind of relax and breathe and just kind of feel the rhythm instead of studying it and kind of being stuck to a metronome. So what I just talked about is a very basic, very brief run through of the book itself. I think that anybody who's really into music, even if you're not a theory guru or you're not all that interested in theory and just like to play, it's a good book just to have around. So hey, what is that? You can look in the book. In any case, I hope you like this short little kind of discussion about Steve Vai's new book, Vaideology. If you did, please go ahead and give me a thumbs up like. If you like what the channel has to offer, it'd be awesome if you could subscribe. Happy Easter or happy Passover, depending on which you observe. And I hope to see you again soon. Take care.